So, Jim, something we used to do is spend a lot of time talking about books that we love to read. But I've been reading a book by a gentleman named James Clear, and the book is called Atomic Habits. And in it, he says to actually reach your outcomes, you need to first go through 2 other steps. So stay tuned to the end of this video. We're going to reveal what those steps are, get Jim's insights, and let's jump in.
How you can be the greatest salesperson on the planet.
So Jim, in this book, he talks about there's 3 steps. So obviously outcome is the last step, what we call results. But there's 2 steps before outcomes, which are you need to have an identity piece, you need to know who you are, and you need to have a process that leads to an outcome.
Right.
So once you know your identity, then you can zoom out in a little bit of a larger circle. You have the processes. Then the final circle is your outcomes or your results.
Right.
And as I read that, I thought, wow, this is so much of what we teach. If you don't have clear processes in place and a clear identity piece, then it's really hard to hit that outcome. So let me give you a story that I was in. You and I were talking about, you've mentored me in sales and growing my sales and recognizing that I had a period probably 12 months ago where I was selling less than I wanted to. And I said, this hasn't happened for a long time. Man, it's been 5 years since I've been in a slump where I'm not selling as much as I wanted to. And you and I talked and you encouraged me. You said, you're just probably not selling enough. You're not getting on the phone enough. I recognize, I'm not thinking about myself as a salesperson.
Yeah.
And that sounds silly. Oh my gosh, you're going to think of yourself as a salesperson? But I didn't think of myself that way. But once I started to say, I talk to expert accounts around me, you're actually really good at that. Naturally, you connect with people, you're welcoming, you're friendly, you care, you're intuitive, right? That's something you've said about me. I recognize, this is me limiting myself to not owning this more. So then as I started to own that identity more, I did the process, right? Which is that next step that Mr. Clear talks about is I started to get processes in place. Okay, instead of making 5 calls a month, let me make 5 calls a week. And then that 5 calls a week turned into 2 or 3 calls every day. And that process didn't happen overnight, but it happened as I embraced, I actually can own that identity, have some small wins. Okay, the small win is I'm going to make 5 calls this week instead of 2 calls in a month. I'm going to get on the phone more and keep selling. And then I'm going to see those results. So talk about that process. Do you think that's true, what James Clear's saying, is that that's a process to move toward results? Or have you seen something different?
First of all, I think that it's very service level. So when you say, I got to make calls, okay, we got to make high quality calls.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a huge difference.
Uh-huh.
So the first thing that I would want to do if I was going to make calls is I want to make sure that I'm giving a high quality planned out call.
Yes.
So number one, when I make a phone call, my first step is to remove the curse of the call. And if I don't do that,
I've never heard you talk about this. Go ahead.
the call is going to be not real good. So when I call somebody, no matter what, and you tell me if I'm wrong. Hey, Derek, Jim Shorkey calling. Did I catch you at a bad time?
And I usually say no.
What if you were in the middle of something, though? Sometimes you are. Oh, geez, okay, I'm sorry to interrupt. When's a good time to call you back? Now I have an appointment to make this call. So I call Derek at 2 o'clock as he designed. And I say, Derek, hey, Jim Shorkey here again. Did I catch you? Is now a good or bad time? Derek says, I'm still jacked up. Okay, when's a good time to call you back? And eventually I'm going to get to a point where Derek, because I haven't told him anything. He's curious. Why am I calling?
Yeah.
So I will get an appointment to call you back. Okay. Some other things that I want you to think about when you're making these calls. The percentage of nonverbal communication is crazy high.
Yes.
You hear numbers anywhere from 70, 80, 90, 50%, whatever. It's significant. It's at least 50%. It's called nonverbal communication. What is that? It's body language. It's hand movement. It's our facial expressions. It's eye contact. Obviously, on the phone, we can't do that one. But when I taught my team how to make really good calls, I wanted them to consider standing up. I wanted them to consider getting a headset with a microphone that comes out.
Yeah.
Because that way you freeze up your hands.
Yeah.
I taught them to smile into the phone. Do you know that the smile carries right forward into the phone?
Yeah.
They can sense the smile. The smile changes your voice, changes your tonality. And believe me, I am a phone call expert. So the advice that I'm giving you is from true ground zero expert counsel.
Yes.
So I want you standing up. When you're standing up, you're way more
I
enthusiastic.
almost always do. Exactly.
I would prefer it if you walked around while you were. So I would like you to invest in a headset with a microphone. Let's get those hands moving. When we make a point, let's make a point. This is a really good deal. Let's make that point. And let's be happy and let's smile. People can feel your enthusiasm and energy. So my first piece of advice would be get a headset. Stand up. You're much more enthusiastic when you're standing than when you're sitting. Make sure you bring your body language into the call. Make sure you smile into the phone. It comes through. And then, of course, we have the headset. We're going to use our hands. We're going to use our nonverbal communication. But I want to make sure that I remove the curse of the call. Because if I don't, then they're not going to listen to a word. Because they're so busy. The baby's diaper needs changed.
Yeah.
They're in the middle of an emergency. There's a frying pan that's overheated or whatever. The water's boiling over. So it's not a good time. And that's okay. Let's make arrangements to call them back. So step number one is to be ready, okay? Yep. So we have the headset. We're ready. We have the mirror. We're ready. We're going to use we're going to walk around. We're ready. And then lastly, I would have a plan for what I'm going to say when I do call.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make some bullet point notes. Now, I didn't do that as I got on with my phone calls. I called every single customer that came in the dealership.
Yes.
I called every single customer that called in the dealership.
Wow.
And what I did was I said, and I'm standing and I'm using my hands and all that. Did I interrupt anything important? No, this is great. Good time. Okay. Hey, the reason I called, I wanted to thank you for your phone call yesterday. I really appreciate you considering the Jim Shorkey Family Auto Group. Hey, I wanted to thank you for stopping in yesterday. So the first step of my list, my bullet points, was a thank you. Attitude of gratitude. Okay. Yeah. The second step, and I had it all mapped up, but I didn't have a map because I had it memorized, right? Yeah. So I saw that you talked to Derek Kelly. I'd like to know how Derek treated you. Derek was great. Derek was awful. He never called me back. Oh, you're kidding me. Well, I am so sorry. That is not what I want. I apologize. So I would go into recovery. And what can I do to make this right? And they would tell me. Yeah. And so my first question was a thank you, or first step was a thank you. Second step was, how do we treat you? And the third step, get this. What can I do to sell you a car today?
Wow, is that direct?
It was.
Yeah.
And guess what they would do? Oftentimes they would tell me. They would tell me, ask and you shall receive. Knock and it shall be opened unto you. Seek and you shall find. And the trick is you got to ask a lot.
Right. Yeah.
You got to seek a lot. You got to knock a lot. So we have our headset. We're standing, we're walking, we're using our body language. We're making these great phone calls. How many are we going to make? How many?
If you're a car salesman, probably, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 calls.
100. I did this all day long in between other tasks. It was very impactful. And I had a message, and that's what I did. And I did it over and over again. And people were amazed that I didn't get worn out.
Yeah.
But guess what?
You cared.
I had reasons why that made me cry.
Yeah.
I wanted to get those 4 dealerships. I wanted to get away from bankruptcy imminent. Yeah. I was in deep trouble.
Yeah.
So that was one thing that I could do is to make those phone calls. And I started making them. And guess what? I wasn't going to be defeated. So I had a good plan. I executed that plan. And I did the same thing every single time. And if you want to challenge me on that, you ask the people at the dealership who were with me at the time. They'll tell you. I was talking to a guy the other day. He says, when I was interviewing for the job, you were sitting there making phone calls. And he said, I never saw anything like that. I couldn't believe it. I would be away, and my team would fax me the information from the previous day. I'd have my cell phone. I'd make those phone calls. I would be at my think tanks. We call them 20 groups. And my guys, they just couldn't believe it. The guys in the group, they couldn't believe it. They witnessed me doing it. They said, I've never seen anything like this. I've never seen anything like this. Guess what? It worked. Yeah. It worked. So To answer a question that kind of hasn't been asked, but I think you're thinking it, before you can move on to bigger and better things, you have to make sure that your system is a good one.
Yes.
You have to make sure that your system is scalable.
Yes.
You have to make sure that your system is teachable. Now, what I told you, does it sound intuitively to you like it's scalable?
Absolutely.
Meaning
yeah.
if it works for 10, it'll work for 100.
Yeah,
If it
absolutely.
works for 100, it'll work for 1,000. So the idea would be, here's what I do. It works. Let me teach it to you.
Yes.
And then I get you to go do it. Now, it's not only me making the phone calls, but I've got 10 people making the phone calls.
Right.
Guess what? If I'm right, if it is scalable, if it is teachable, and if it is proven to be successful, I'm going to be selling cars in my sleep. What if you had a business that would run in your sleep? Do you guess possible?
Yeah,
Do you know I'm not at the dealership anymore?
that's right.
I go in to visit and cause trouble. I promise you that the systems that we installed years ago, now they may have been modified, but
Sure.
I sleep really well.
I was going to say, you probably sleep better when you know there's...
You absolutely will. You know that the systems are in place. And then you know by the numbers, results are the name of the game. Don't forget that. You know by the numbers whether they're in fact doing the system or not. And so we have one particular person that the numbers aren't there. Somebody else is knocking it out of the park. So we pull the person in and say, let's go over your process. You're not doing the squats the right way, Jim.
Yeah. You're not
butt
calling
back.
the people back,
Well,
Jim.
I'm saying it's the same thing, though.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
all the same thing.
Yeah.
Yes. Squats and phone calls are the same thing. There's a right way and there's a wrong way. And if we do it the wrong way, we're going to get in trouble. And that's what Mark told me last week. He said, you're doing it wrong. So I changed it. And I'm
You
doing
make it
right.
sound so simple because I feel like there's an art of communication that you're really good at that also is teachable. It's not just getting on the phone and going, it is that.
Yeah, but it really is that simple. It's very simple, but it's very challenging to get the team to do it. And so that's where the enthusiasm and the passion and the persistence. And sometimes it does come down to the idea of this isn't for you, Derek. This isn't for you. I need to find somebody who's going to do what I want them to do. Clearly, you're not doing it, so it's not for you. So you're going to make room for somebody else. This is not it.
Yeah, but you could do better at.
And you may say to me, you know what? You're right. I'm not doing what you asked me to do. Can I have another chance? I got a heart the size of Montana. Of course you can. But I'm going to check back with you in a week, and I'm going to make sure, because if you're not, then you're going to have to leave.
Yep.
And that was the way I approached it. It wasn't that I was being vindictive or mean. No. It's, there is this thing called Pittsburgh Steelers football. And that's how they want to play the game. That's their right.
Yeah.
That's their right. And so if you don't want to run the game the way the Steelers want to run the game.
You're going to be on the Steelers team.
Matter of fact, the coach of the Steelers, I'm trying to
Tomlin.
Mike Tomlin. I read this on Facebook. I don't know if it's true or not, but he made an announcement that anybody who decides to kneel for the Star Spangled Banner, the national anthem, head for the exit. Any Pittsburgh Steeler who wants to do that, head for the exit. Something like that.
Sure.
I thought, that's cool. You can agree or disagree. It's his right to say that and to execute that. And if you don't like that, then you need to head for the exit and go find you another team.
Yeah.
This is not the team for you, because we're going to stand for the national anthem. We're going to stand and we're going to be quiet and we're going to look at the flag and we're going to really take a moment and reflect on what that really stands for. You have the right to
That's
free
not
speech.
the team for you.
But this is not the team for you. You with me?
Yeah, that's clear. I love how you did that because it didn't feel insulting. It didn't feel like, you know what, Derek, you just didn't measure up. It was much more.
Yeah, you do measure up, Derek. You do measure up very well. You're just not doing what I want you to do. It is that simple. I want you to do 1 through 10. I want you to do 1 through 8.
Right.
I want all 10 in this order. And if you aren't willing to do that, then you need to find you another team. It's that simple. you know?
Right.
And maybe they'll do 10 through 1. Okay. And I would love to hear if they do 10 through 1, you say, wow, we're really killing it. I'd say, let me consider that.
Let me learn.
I like to learn. But for now, we're doing 1 through 10. In that order, in this method, we want the headset. I'll even buy one for you, okay? How about that?
Right.
So we want the headset. We want the standing up. We want you moving around. We want you enthusiastic. and as teachers and trainers, we really don't necessarily get this, but selling is nothing more than a transfer of enthusiasm from inside here to this person over here.
Yeah.
And so if you notice how I'm leaning here, it's around increasing my enthusiasm
'Cause you're standing
for
up.
the phone call, because I'm standing up and I'm using my hands to talk, and I got a big smile on my face, and I'm very careful to watch my tonality, and I make sure that I'm not interrupting something important, which is a very respectful thing to do. It's all geared around enthusiasm. Selling is a transfer of enthusiasm.
Yeah.
So you got your first lesson from Jim Shorkey on selling.
It was good because I started out talking about identity and processes and outcomes, and you said, I think it's all of that, but that's a really simplistic way to talk about it.
You got to have the right process. It's got to be functional and working. It's got to be scalable, teachable, and all that. And then these things start to make sense. So we had a very specific process for how we wanted phone calls made, a very specific process for how we wanted to have the customer greeted and the questions that we wanted you to ask. It was and we trained on it, repetition. It's called spaced repetition. So we train, and then we take a break, and then we train, and then we take a break. With spaced repetition, it starts to become ingrained, and then it becomes a habit. So you're talking about atomic habits. I'm sure James, you say it's Claire or Claire.
Yeah.
I think if he and I had a conversation, that he would say, makes sense.
Yeah.
I think what he's, oh, sorry, I haven't heard him speak, but the way you're explaining, it sounds like it's way too surface level.
I think he talks about small wins, which you probably saw with your salespeople.
Absolutely.
In the sense
Very
of,
important.
okay, they did a really good job with these 3 customers.
Great. I just talked to Joe Schmo. You did a great job. Thank you for that. So that's also, in making those phone calls, add the opportunity to run meetings around the phone calls. For example, yesterday I made my 100 phone calls. 30% of them weren't happy. That's a bad number. We don't want that. Maybe 5%, 10%, not 30%. So results are the name of the game, right? We know this. Results are nothing more than information. They're giving us information. If we don't like our results, too many unhappy customers, we're probably doing something wrong. So let's make sure that we go over the process again. Let's train on it. Let's role play on it. Let's teach on it. And you'll find that that needle.
Yeah. Guys, you just heard Jim give such a deep dive. I was giving him a baseline to start with, and he just went off the deep end and dove right in to, honestly, some of the nuances of good communication, strong sales, having a process, right? Having those systems in place that really help you succeed, and connecting that back to your goals and your reason why that we even talked about on the last episode.
I want you to understand, the first step is to have a very clear, concise goal. The second step is to have reasons why that make you cry. The third step is to seek expert counsel to find out what the steps are you need to execute to move towards the goal.
Jim, thank you for just sharing taking that concept that I had and really just saying, hey, we can go deeper than this. And here's what I'm doing here, and here's what I'm reading. And really, guys, we're just trying to give you the insight and knowledge that we've learned to pass it on to you so you can become the person you were meant to be, to live out your mission and your purpose.
Can you do me, Jim Shorkey, a favor? Please subscribe. Please follow. What we're attempting to do here is to affect the algorithm, which is a mathematical formula. The more activity we have in terms of the likes and the shares, I forgot about share. Like it, share it, watch it again. The more you watch it, the more you share it, the more you subscribe, the more you all that. It all impacts the algorithm. So we really are trying to grow this idea so that we can get it in the hands of more people. We don't know who that one person is that's going to change the world as a result of this message. So thank you so much for joining us today.